Happy Holy Hump Day on this March 1st, everyone. I'm Pastor Robert, and welcome to this midweek time where I can share some spiritual thoughts and reflections with you. And today I want to share some historical reflections with you because today is the birthday of the state of Ohio.
Hang on, Snoopy, Snoopy, hang on. Hang on, Snoopy, Snoopy, hang on.
Happy birthday, Ohio. This is our 220th birthday today for the state of Ohio, and it was the 17th state that was added to the Union. Thomas Jefferson was president when Ohio was added to the Union. Chillicothe became the capital of this new state beginning in 1803. And we've had 8 presidents that have come from the state of Ohio. That's very impressive. And so I'm in our archives room here at the church. It's on the 3rd floor. We have all of our local church historical items in here. It's a wonderful place to go just to kind of reminisce our church's history. And so I've been thinking about, since today is the birthday anniversary of the state of Ohio, I've been thinking about the history of Methodism in the state of Ohio. And there is a lot of Methodist history in Ohio. In fact, there are several prominent Ohioans who were Methodist. So let me just give some examples of that. We have Thomas Worthington, who was one of Ohio's first U.S. senators from 1810 to 1814, and he was the 6th governor of the state of Ohio from 1814 to 1818, and Worthington, Ohio is named after him. And then we have Edward Tiffin, who was a Methodist. He was Ohio's very first governor from 1803 to 1807. And then we also have Rutherford B. Hayes, a Methodist, who was the 19th president of our country from 1877 to 1881. Hayes Memorial United Methodist Church in Fremont, Ohio, is actually named after him because Rutherford B. Hayes and his wife Lucy were very supportive of that congregation there in Fremont. And then I also was thinking about early Methodist history in Ohio. When did Methodists start here in this state? And this was known as the Northwest Territory before it became the state of Ohio. So here's what I have to share with you about when was the very first organized Methodist group here in Ohio? Well, that was 1797, and it was in Milford, Ohio, thanks to Reverend Francis McCormick, who organized a small group of people to become a Methodist class meeting. And again, that was 1797. Milford is located in southwest Ohio. But that is known as the very first organized Methodist class meeting. So let me just stop there for a second. What were Methodist class meetings? Well, this was a carryover from John and Charles Wesley, who were brothers and Anglican priests in the Church of England. In the 1700s, they were seeking to reform the Church of England through these small groups that would meet, and these small groups made a commitment. There was like 10 or so people, but they made a commitment to each other to help one another grow as disciples of Jesus through prayer, through the reading of Scripture, through encouraging each other to do no harm, to do good, to stay in love with God. And they shared with each other their joys and their struggles in being disciples of Jesus. And they were also known to ask each other the very important question, how is it with your soul? So the very first Methodist class meeting that did those kinds of things would have been in 1797 there in southwest Ohio at Milford. But the very first Methodist church building was built 3 years later in 1800, and that was Moore's Chapel, also in southwest Ohio. That was built 1800, and there's a historical marker in front of Moore's Chapel located in southern Ohio. I happened to have visited that site when I was down in that area, and I just kind of stumbled upon it and took a picture of this plaque that commemorates that as the first Methodist church building in the Northwest Territory in the state of Ohio. So then that leads us to ask the question about our own church, Athens First United Methodist Church. how far back do we date? And we date back to 1800, and that was just 3 years, after the very first organized class meeting that happened in Milford, Ohio. But like them, our church began with a Methodist class meeting, and it wasn't until 1815, so like 15 years later, that we had our first church building here for our congregation. And so those class meetings were meeting in people's homes, and then they were able to build a building. And we have had 4 buildings in our church's history, including this one, which was built in the 1950s. So, Methodism in Ohio began around, the late 1700s and the early 1800s. And there's a lot of churches in the last several years in Ohio, several United Methodist churches that have been celebrating their bicentennial, because we have a lot of churches that did start around the time that we did, around 1800 or a little after. So there's a lot of history related to Methodism in Ohio. And so I hope you enjoyed that time of reflection, just thinking about how far we do date back here in Ohio, and how the history of Ohio is often intertwined with our Methodist history. I think that's wonderful to think about. So I invite you to join us this Sunday for worship at either 9 o'clock or 10:30. And we also have our live stream on our church's YouTube channel beginning at 10:30. We're going to continue in our Season of Lent sermon series, where we're going to focus on When I Survey My Faith. And this is based on the Isaac Watts hymn, When I Survey the Wondrous Cross. This Sunday, we're going to focus on When I Survey My Faith. And it's based on the story of when God called Abraham and Sarah to step out in faith. So we're going to reflect on that theme this Sunday. So again, I just want to say happy 220th birthday to the state of Ohio.